to his next comment about people of faith. He said that religion is irrational because it justifies killing people. Are you convinced by Dawkins that religion does indeed justify killing people? You could talk about just war theory, and that you know, killing for the sake of defense of your country. That could be. Is that what he means, or is he more meaning in a more ambivalent, sort of malicious way?
Well, I think he takes this to be sort of maybe an empirical claim slash inference where it's like, yeah, you actually have people who are motivated by their religious beliefs to do really evil things to people and to fly airplanes into buildings and to mutilate people, chop people's arms off, all that kind of stuff. So he sees that happening and sees it is clustered around these religious beliefs. And I think today he's going to look at Christianity and say, they're, especially in the Church of England or whatever, they're much more docile than that. But there's an underlying assumption here, I think, where he's like, look, if there is this God, and this God is all powerful and all knowing and all good, and whatever this God says is good, in principle, like, if that God says you're not supposed to go kill people, then you actually have an obligation to do that. So I actually, in some sense, I don't think he's that far off. Like, if you're a divine command theorist, for example, in the Christian theology, if God says you need to go kill said person, then you actually have an obligation to do that. So I think he's picking up on something that isn't all that far off from the truth, but I think he twists it, right?
Yeah, I think anybody who hears, the word kill or killing. Obviously, there's a negative connotation to that. There are instances in the Old Testament where God commanded his people to enter the land of Canaan and conquer it and make it their own land. So yeah, you're right. There are instances of killing that has been commanded by God. But I feel that there's, like you said, there's an undertone of judgment on his part for like any killing whatsoever, and that it's just people going in like willy-nilly, like the Crusades, and I think mostly what he's referring to on a Christian side are the Crusades, because that's where you have people going on an expedition, and then there's a lot of death and there's a lot of killing, and there's also Crusades in Europe that are happening, that are killing people. How do we get out of this, Matt? How do I get out of the conundrum right now? What should I say?
Well, I mean, I think he's onto something, right? Like, there is killing in that's motivated by religious considerations. Sure, I think we have to bite the bullet on that and say he's right. But the question is that wrong? Is that a bad thing? In some cases it might be, and in some cases it may not be. But I don't think you can make some kind of blanket claim that if there is some kind of killing in the name of religion or something like that, that's bad necessarily, right? For him, although I think it's necessarily bad because you're doing it based on some fantasy. There is no actual God out there who's all good and all powerful and all knowing, who's commanding people to do these things. So if that's
for the
the
greater
back,
good, or if God's commanding you to do it for some sort of greater good, or to stamp out evil,
right? Or you could just say, well, look, Dawkins, I mean, all of this doesn't make sense to you because, morally speaking, because you don't think there's anybody who is actually commanding us to do this. Now,
that's true.
Even if there was some God that commanded people, he would just call them evil and sadistic and wretched and all that kind of stuff. So he doesn't believe that there's a God, so it's clearly absurd to kill in the name of a God because there is no God. But even if there is a God doing that, then he's not a God worthy of worship, or it's not a God worthy of worship, or something like that for Dawkins.
And would you say Dawkins? I guess I've never read him, but I'm assuming he's like someone who's for like abortion. I think is he.
I don't know. I'm not sure where it's what is. I know Christopher Hitchens, I think, was pro-life. Interestingly
Hmm.
enough, I'm not sure where Dawkins stands on that.
Well, I'm saying just for sake of argument, if he was for abortion,
Oh,
then
sorry.
I guess he's not against some killing, as long as we define it a certain way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But honestly, within Christian theology, there is at least some consensus that good is tied to God, right? And in classical theism, for example, God is goodness. He doesn't just have goodness.
Mhm.
God is goodness. So there's a very strong tie between God and goodness in Christian religion and in other religions as well. Dawkins is trying to break that off, right? I don't know how you can do that, right, with some kind of naturalistic um, underpinnings. So, if he can give some kind of naturalistic account for morality, which, to, at least to my knowledge, is not, none of them have been very impressive, then I don't know. I think we have an advantage as theists that we have some kind of divine being to account for goodness and some kind of metaphysical account for it. Right? It's not just a rational one, it's actually a metaphysical account. There's something in reality that accounts for what makes something good.
And I guess Dawkins is kind of playing into the residual, maybe, sense of morality in Great Britain that is
Yeah.
based in Christianity, which says, "Hey, yeah, killing's wrong."
Right. Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
We all.
he's playing to his audience, saying, "Obviously, my audience thinks killing's wrong. Christians and other people of faith, they kill people sometimes, so therefore, Christianity and other religions are false or horrible because they do such a thing."
Yeah, and interestingly enough, a lot of his rhetoric, like Sam Harris's rhetoric, for example, are largely based on their moral rejection of this God. Like, if there is this God, he's just evil, he's horrible, he's wretched. So why would you ever worship him, even if he did exist, right? So
Mhm.
it's that moral rejection. And interestingly enough, a lot of Christian theists are going to respond by saying, well, yeah, but you have this moral outrage at this God, but what is it that actually warrants or justifies your claim there? Like, what is it that grounds this objective morality by which you stand and judge the theistic morality or the morality of God? Now, there are some interesting responses, right? Like, it's not like that's the end of the story, because clearly we do think things like killing people for fun or going and committing genocide, like, that's bad.
Mhm.
And if God's morality is anything like ours, well, then why would he do that? Why would he allow that or command it? You know, so it is a more
Yeah.
tricky problem than just saying, well, you need some kind of ground for morality in order to make your claim. Though that's true, there is a lot of intuitive appeal. Like, I don't want to just jettison my moral intuitions to
Mhm.
justify theism, right? I want my moral intuitions to somehow comport with my theism.